All right, team, we are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have a non-PM guest, which will be fun. I've got Kirk Mattson, who's a engineering director at Adobe, and I suggested that we do a interview where we talk about, uh, you know, pet peeves about working with PMs and what great PM looks like from an engineering leader's point of view. So it should be a fun conversation. But before we get into that, Kirk, why don't we start with a little bit of introduction to yourself? I understand you have a very impressive academic background.
Yes, thank you for having me, Tom. You and I share the same alma mater, and I started with a liberal arts background. I did have a math minor, and that got me into my first role in doing big data analysis. But I was always more interested in the computing side of it, and so then I took software engineering at night school, really to learn computer science, and took classes in C, C++, data structures, algorithms, Java, and eventually met a colleague in one of my classes who worked for Adobe and suggested I join. And I've been there ever since. I've had a lot of different jobs. It sounds like I've only had one job for a long time after that initial one. But at a place like Adobe, as you know, there are just a vast array of endeavors going on. So I've worked in web, I've worked in desktop, I've worked in mobile. I've had the enjoyment of working in all sorts of different tech, building software throughout Adobe, and I really loved it. It's a great place, lots of talented engineers, and we build a great product. So, and still enjoying every day.
Yeah, and have you always been at Adobe in Seattle, or were you ever in the Bay Area?
No, I was in the Bay Area for a while. My wife actually dragged me down there. We were talking about Berkeley earlier, and my wife got her master's degree at Berkeley. And so I kind of followed her down there and worked for Adobe out of headquarters in San Jose. We had a small office in Emeryville at the time. We still do. We didn't have our San Francisco office at the time, but now I end up going down to San Francisco and San Jose quite a bit.
What did you major in at Bowdoin?
I majored in biochemistry and minored in math.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so technical skills. And actually, for anyone out there who's listening who wants to go into engineering or a technical discipline but has the liberal arts background, I found that the technical education I got at Bowdoin was fantastic because you learn how to write and communicate. With tech, you don't just learn the actual skills themselves, the STEM around, whether it's biochemistry or mathematics or something. You learn how to write about biochemistry and mathematics. You learn how to speak and communicate around technical subjects, and that has become hugely important for my career, and it's so valuable to not only the engineers around me but also the product managers.
I love it. Yeah, well, I kind of feel like my recollection is those chem classes at Bowdoin were pretty tough. So if you can survive those, you can learn a lot of things. Or you can hang out with the slackers at Hubbard Hall and take some code classes with me.
There's challenge to be had everywhere at a school. You have to find it and make it for yourself.
Indeed. So let's talk a little bit about your experience working with product managers. Like, what is the PM culture like at Adobe, and what purpose do they serve over there?
Sure. Yeah, Adobe's a very free place. We have a lot of empowerment in what we do day to day, and my partners have always been product managers. So you can't. Yeah, I couldn't go anywhere in business without a product manager. I mean, as teams get smaller, you end up assuming more and more roles, but that connection between a business leader and a technical leader is huge. And so, that role can vary quite a bit depending on whether you're, in a smaller sort of early stage endeavor or whether you're in a later stage endeavor that's more formal, and we've got everything from little innovation ideas going on at Adobe to very large operations like Photoshop. And so the PM role can be more formal. You may have quite a few PMs working on a product like Photoshop, each very specialized. And then, of course, you're working on something that's very early stage innovative. You have one PM that's kind of doing everything. And it takes a different type of person to achieve at each one, I think. But some characteristics. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about what I see in the PM role and some characteristics that I feel are incredibly valuable. So, I mean, business acumen is strong. You've got to be able to sense what the customers want and what will be effective to them in solving their problems, and that's core. But it's also a lot of patience, maybe, and calm. When you're dealing with a company like Adobe that's moving fast, I'm sure it's no different at Google or Apple or any of the other tech companies that are in competition every day with not only each other, but also so many startups out there. We like to move quickly. And so there's a lot of pressure from all sides. So not only from the market itself, but also internally. And so having someone who can be calm and patient and think through rationally has certainly been helpful to me. And maybe it's my engineering background that, likes to communicate that way. But I found those are often the most successful PMs I've worked with too.
Yeah. Can you think about a time where you were working on a project or an initiative where you look back and you're like, wow, that PM really helped make this project successful? And like, there was like a moment where, or a decision or an event or something that kind of comes to mind that you could share?
Yeah, I've worked with so many wonderful PMs, and again, the characteristics are different depending on what they're doing. So, for example, I worked on a project that had a strong connection to customers, and so for that particular PM, they were, they had a strong marketing background, and they could work closely with individuals. They're almost like an entertainer. So you'd see them in front of audiences. You'd see them working with customers directly. That's really where they shined. And they could bring all that information back into the product. So as they connected with customers, they brought that back, of course, to me, and we figured out how we would build software to solve their problems. And so that kind of experience, or that kind of talent is great, when you're at one particular stage, maybe, of product development. But another stage, you've got to have maybe more of a data-driven scientific background. I've worked with PMs that are much more into data science and experimentation. And so we put something out in market, we measure it, we see what happens, we take that, we iterate and respond, and just having that down to a science where you can turn that crank quickly. I think that's an incredibly valuable skill in PMs, and you can have success there in certain endeavors, maybe without the entertainment side of things.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like your view is that depending on the project, you may need a PM to kind of spike in a different area, depending on the needs of the team. I'm curious, you're probably involved with talent assessment and evaluations, either as part of the recruiting process or maybe as part of the promotion process. What are some of the key boxes you like to look for in determining whether someone would make a great PM or if someone's doing a great job currently in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about a couple of those. So we've talked about technical communication and business acumen. I mean, those are both extremely strong. I think that's a lot of what I look for when I'm hiring. So when you're hiring, is slightly different than when you're evaluating performance, because when you're hiring, you can look for what you believe is necessary, and those core foundational skills that can be applied in many ways. So again, technical communication, business acumen. If I can spot those and see those, then I'll hope that they can be applied to whatever varying situations come up in day-to-day operations. So, and then when you're evaluating, it's different because you've got a history to work with there, and the exact context that someone's been involved. So you might have decisions that you've agreed with or decisions that you've disagreed with. Even the ones that I've disagreed with, sometimes we've gone on to be successful with them. And so, that I learn a lot through those. And certainly that's an area where, I can give accolades to that PM, for trying something different. So I look at those two slightly differently.
Yeah, maybe we'll start with the assessment of inbound talent when you're on some loop and you're interviewing someone. What are some of the, like, and they're external. When you look at that resume, what are things that you tend to kind of focus on?
Well, I look at resumes more for questions to start digging at. I'm not interested in academics as much. I'm not interested in the exact jobs. I do look for a couple things. I look for scale as one. So I want to know if you've had a role where you've delivered at scale. So, it's great if you've done an internal product, for example, something at a big company that's used internally. Super cool. And we can build on that and work with it. But I'm probably not going to recommend you for a PM on something that scales up to millions of users like Photoshop immediately. You're going to have to build up to that. So I do look for a couple of things, but more than anything, I'm looking at the resume as some context with which to dive in and ask questions. And then I'm going to ask questions about, how you break down big problems and how you can take something, maybe a large offering that you'd like to see in market, and break it down into smaller offerings and figure out, okay, how are you going to prioritize, this, what comes first and what comes second, as you think about eventually leading to a goal that might take a year or years to achieve.
And over the years, Kirk, as you've interviewed a lot of talent, what are the types of questions that you find most useful to understand a candidate for the PM hiring managers out there? How do
Yeah,
you?
it's like, so, maybe another way to look at the PM role from the outside is you're sort of the arbiter of balance. So you've got all these competing forces within a company, and a lot of them are, long-term value versus short-term value, or, how much to invest in design and UX versus how much to invest in engineering and tech, or time to market versus feature set, or whatever it is. It's all these kind of pushes that are going on, and the PM makes the final decision on how to balance out all those constraints and figure out how to sort of worm your way through them all and get out to market with a powerful offering that resonates with customers. So, what I would set up in an interview typically is some kind of constraint where they multiple constraints where they have to deal with a situation and poke at how they're going to make a decision. I don't have any predefined answer on what the decision should be. I'm more interested in, what criteria did you use to evaluate this prioritization? How did you decide that, stage one would be more important than stage two, as you realize you can't take this entire thing out to market at once?
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think balance and trade-offs is kind of the wheelhouse of a PM for sure. In terms of, once the PMs are in the organization and you're assessing who's ready to take on more and kind of grow in their career. Certainly, when I did it at Google, one of the rules of thumb was like scope, skills, and impact. Like how much stuff are they covering? How are they doing at the job? And then what measurable kind of results can we look at? I'm curious how you guys do it at Adobe in terms of evaluating.
Yeah, I think you'd probably find it's less formal. Well, that's not probably the right way to put it. I mean, it's formal in that we have a lot of structure in how we evaluate people, but I think there's a lot of space for different types of PM to grow in different ways. So, for example, we talked about a couple of the different strengths you might see in PM. So, you might have, for example, a PM that's very strong at vision. And that would be, for certain roles, that would be great. And they actually might be better for a role that is overseeing a larger project. even though they haven't had as much experience with like day-to-day execution. Maybe they're a better people manager, and so you put them in a role with vision and people management. And there might be another PM who's extremely talented, maybe more of the data-driven execution side of things, like I was talking about. So someone who's really good at experimentation and running those iterations quickly and getting feedback and responding and doing the next thing. And I think there's room for both of them to grow. It's certainly possible that second type too, the more data-driven style PM, could ascend to a position of leadership in a certain area as well. So I think what I see with Adobe is a lot of attention to talents and figuring out the right business at which to apply those talents. So you're not going to find, a specific set of criteria that work exactly across a large company like Adobe for all the PMs.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's ironic. I mean, Google's a pretty big company too, but we did generally have one PM ladder, or sorry, I think they now call it job profile.
Okay.
And it's this level, this level, and this level. But in fact, at my last project at Google was a kind of applied research incubation effort. And we were finding that, the rules of thumb to evaluate a PM for like AdWords or YouTube or search, like that, you can't apply that to a advanced kind of R&D effort. And like now we have to kind of have like a little side profile to capture people's impact in a different way. So it sounds like you all have always had a more kind of flexible approach to evaluate. There wasn't one model.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Adobe's perfect, by the way. I think that comes from things generally being pretty loose around Adobe, and that's both good and bad. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think in that way it serves us well. In terms of people development, that serves us really well, because humans have so many varying strengths, and the business problems that we have or the customer opportunities that we have out there are just so different. And so you're going to want to find the right person to attack the right business opportunity.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think it also perhaps highlights like different worldviews on talent. I think there is one worldview where you say, hey, we're looking for generalist athletes that are just going to be lights out, whatever the problem is. M&A thing, an incubation thing, a scaling thing, a replatforming thing. And then there's another worldview, which is like that approach may not scale. That's not really how people work and how people are wired. There are some people that are just great at one thing that may not be as in another. So that's
and there are some. It's rare to find those superstars that can do anything, but they're certainly out there. And and then you find superstars in one particular focused area as well, and you want to get them on board if you've got that particular problem.
For sure. What about the inverse? Like, where have you seen PMs who are really capable, hardworking, super bright, but they just struggle? And what are some common pitfalls you've seen from product managers in your career?
Yeah, I think the biggest is culture. So not understanding the culture, even within each company has its own culture. So I'm sure Google is very different from Adobe. And then within each business unit or operation within a large company like Adobe, you have different culture. And so, you see some people that are very bright and talented and maybe have one particular approach, like let's say you want to do the data-driven experimentation thing. That is awesome. So there might be another product team you're working with, or maybe a partnership that you need that is really all about vision and what they operate on, and how they're going to be swayed to partner with you and invest is if you can sell them on the big picture. And so it might be that someone just doesn't know how to adapt to that culture, know how to listen and understand that particular partnership and adapt accordingly to be successful there. So I think culture can be a big struggling point for PMs.
And when you can you think of an example where you saw PM struggle with that, and then like how they managed to navigate through it and be more successful? Like, what is the solution? Do they have to
Sure.
switch teams or?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately an adaptation, right? So as a PM, also, I think you have to be able to be responsive to the world around you and adapt. And so often you'll see that, in PMs talking about that with the customer, with the market. So as the market changes, we need to adapt our product accordingly. And a good PM will have their finger on the pulse of the market, on the pulse of competitors, know where that opportunity is going. I don't think people talk about that as much internally. At least at Adobe, my experience is people don't talk as much about how important that is internally. And when we're building the types of software that we're building today, often involve many people across many teams to make a workflow successful. So you're going to have to win that internal, win over those internal hearts and minds as well as those of a customer. And so I think, to be successful, I think you have to put that same hat on that you use externally and try to apply those PM principles internally as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as companies get bigger and more complex, navigating internal audiences and internal needs and internal trade-offs is at least as important as the external ones. Um, Kurt, it's been great catching up with you. Since it is 2024, I feel obligated to ask for your opinion on AI.
Sure.
So maybe we could wrap with like, what are your thoughts on AI? Do you feel like we're on the verge of another kind of 1999 moment or bigger? Like, what is this, like the new electricity? How are you thinking?
It's definitely huge, and it's the biggest change I've seen in my career. And I think we're all trying to figure out exactly what it means. So certainly Adobe at a product level is trying to figure out what it means. And you've seen lots of our forays into the market in terms of generative AI for creative content. And so I think that will continue on the outside, which is, okay, what are all these companies going to do in terms of product offering?
Mm-hmm.
We're in the early stages of that. It's going to be awesome to watch. I can tell you that. I don't have any idea where it's going to end up, but I know it's going to be fun. And then the other thing that I think about is, for me and my team of engineers, how do we use AI to help us do our jobs better? And those are going to be the winners of the new society. Those that can figure out how to harness and use AI, whether that's to help as a PM with business, or to help as an engineer with writing code, or whatever the reason. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, is focusing on that latter, as well as helping wherever I can on the former.
Yeah, and on the latter, are you at the point where you've seen the use of, let's say, generative AI in your own software development organizations, like start to take root? Or is it more like, well, we're kind of testing out things, trying things out? Or is it like, oh yeah, we're all in, like it's already happening?
We're using it. It's really cool. First of all, it can be incredibly helpful as a to help you go faster. Now, it's not these even on the coding side, these models are not perfect, and so the code it generates, much like the images you get, that sometimes you might see a sixth finger or something odd in an image like that. The code that's being generated is the same. So it's pretty good, and it helps a ton. But at this stage, we still need humans to oversee it and take a look at it, make sure it's correct. But if we train those humans to understand and use it wisely, it can be a huge accelerator in what we do.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest son is taking a CS class in high school right now, and I've seen him using ChatGPT to help him debug his code, and it
Yeah.
explains where he's making mistakes and makes suggestions. And generally, like, it's at least for his basic coding, it's been pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's only a matter of time before I'm sure it could be used at higher and higher levels. So that's exciting to see.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah.
I was just going to add one more thing that people don't always think about is one of the challenges for companies like Adobe that are intellectual property heavy is figuring out how to ensure that your intellectual property remains safe, and that's something Adobe takes very seriously. So, there are um, um, certain AI products that we're okay with, certain ones that we're not okay with, and I think local models is where you're going to see a lot of development in the future, custom models and local models where people can run them safely on their own machine at home or at work and not be have that content contributing to the larger model.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That'll be, yeah, I think there's a lot of these large models that I'm not, yeah, some of the providers aren't very clear where they were trained and what was in and what was out. But I'm guessing there were some people humans that created that knowledge. And it'll be important to protect their rights and ensure that everybody's, kind of fairly treated.
Yeah.
Kirk, it's been great catching up with you, my friend. And congrats on all the great work. I mean, I've definitely spent many times in Premiere back in the day when I was doing a lot of YouTube video editing, and love the work you guys are doing. So keep it up. And any final thoughts, or how can people kind of stay connected to you if they want to kind of stay in touch?
Well, thanks, Tom. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate all you've done with this show and getting out there and helping people who are maybe more junior in their career understand more about what we do as professionals. So I think you're doing great service. Keep it up. As far as connecting with me, LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm not overly sharing at this point, but I hope to get into some more of that in the future.
Yeah. And is Adobe hiring, or are you all
Yeah,
looking for people? And what
sure.
kinds of folks are you looking for these days?
Yeah, we're always hiring. I mean, it's companies like ours. It varies. Right now, is a lot of ML and AI, and for those folks that don't have the CS experience developing models, I'd say still look at our offerings because there's a lot of general computer scientists that work on using the output of those models and developing software, developing products, developing workflows, developing web UX for people to interact with AI and ML. And it's a great way to get experience working with those models and start dipping your toe in a little deeper, even if you don't have that direct experience.
Love it. Well, hopefully, maybe there's even a couple of Bowdoin juniors or seniors watching this that can be inspired to get involved as well. What advice would you give to like people super early in their career who are like, wow, I hear Gen AI is a big deal. Like, what can they do to get ready and to be useful to a future employer while they're still in school?
Well, get your arms around it. I mean, start playing with it. Use it. You use everything you can get your hands on. Try the different. If you're looking for image creation, try the different models out there. If you're looking for languages, there's plenty of different chat bots to interact with, and just start figuring out how you can use it wisely in what you do day to day. And I think that's going to go a long way for future employers to if you can explain that you're on top of this change that's happening in the world and you're able to harness it successfully.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the new spreadsheets or PowerPoint or Excel. Like you just have it needs to be part of your toolkit now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Well, thanks, Kirk.
Thank
Hopefully
you, Tom. It's a
we'll
pleasure.
catch up again soon and enjoy. Hopefully the sun and the weather's starting to turn around in Seattle. Like I remember this time of year, you're starting to get some sunny days.
Yep. Yep. Should be good.
I love it. Take care, buddy.
All right. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye,
Kirk.
Tom.
All right, Kirk Mattson. Let me give some takeaways from the convo, and then we'll wrap up. I think one of the things that's interesting that Kirk brought up was how there are different types of PMs for different types of projects. And maybe one thing that you all may want to think about is like, well, yes, you're going to want to have uh, a variety and breadth of experience as a PM. But where do your eyes light up? Like, I know I'm definitely a 0 to 1 kind of guy. And, as much as I learned from working on mature products or migrations or deprecations or scaling of existing products, working on a brand new product or a brand new feature area or, brand new feature is always super fun for me. But to Kirk's point, that requires a different set of skills than working on a super like scientifically technical or hard product, or a really complex product from a legal or regulatory point of view or privacy. You don't have to be the PM that can do everything. You should be able to do lots of things, but it's good food for thought on like, well, what's going to be the vertical line in your T skill set as a PM. And there's something for everyone. Not everyone needs to be the person shipping some new B2C app. That could be fun, but there's a whole stack underneath that, as well as other types of products that are as important, if not more important, for humanity. So that's worth thinking about. Last thing I'll share is that I've got a bunch of PM classes that I'm teaching online, live, in small cohorts that you can check out on maven.com/TomL, which is right there. And if that's useful to you, would love to see you in class. And then I do a bunch of PM coaching, usually for mid-career PMs, but I work with some that are earlier, and then I work with some product leaders at usually like venture-backed startups. So if that's of interest to you, reach out to me, or you can check out tomleungcoaching.com. But I'll wrap up here and would love to know in the comments below, what is your favorite? Like, I assume that we as PMs all want to work on the 0 to 1 consumer facing stuff. It's just like super fun. But yeah, curious, like maybe that's an old school PM speaking. Maybe you all are more diverse than that. And like there's some back end folks there, or some data PMs there, or maybe uh, AI model PMs, or enterprise PMs, B2B, internal tools, trust and safety. Like there's a bunch of them. What's your favorite and why? All right, let me know in the comments and I will definitely read them. And we will see you next time. All right, let's get back to work.